28.
Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. 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 Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash, page 13 at page 131. Shiru Ladonai Kol haaretz. Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Ladonai Kol haaretz. Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash. Or Zaruah, Psalm 97, page 14 or page 132. Or Zaruah, Lad Sadiku, Yisraelef Simcha. Or Zaruah, Lad Sadiku, Yisraelef Simcha. Simchu tzadikim ba'Adonai, ba'Adonai, ve'hodu lezecher kodsho, lezecher kodsho. Zaruah, Sadiku, Yisrael Simcha. Zaruah, Lad Sadiku. Continue with Ozi Vizim Ratia, page 343, page 647. Ozi Vizim Ratia, Vayahili Lishua. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Psalm 29, page 18 or 136. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo. Adonai yivarech et amo. Bashalom. Adonai yivarech et amo. Bashalom. Bashalom. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo. Adonai yivarech et amo. Vashalom. Adonai yivarech et amo. Vashalom. Vashalom. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. It is so good to be with all of you this evening to welcome Shabbat and to observe this, the beginning of the last day of Passover. Tonight we'll be including a few excerpts from the poetry from the new CCAR Haggadah, some that we included last week as well. And tonight, we will also be observing Yizkor, as we will tomorrow morning. But tonight we'll have the opportunity to call into our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers, members of our families who have passed on from this earth, but continue to be with us through the tenderness of memory. And we will be showing pictures that have been submitted of loved ones that are being remembered in this moment. We'll also have a chance to reflect a little bit on the history of and the origins of the Maxwell House Haggadah. I keep wanting to say Maxwell Street Haggadah, but that's very specific to Chicago and has nothing to do with the Maxwell House Haggadah. And so before we continue with any of this, I invite you to look 2 tiles over, go to gallery view, look 2 tiles over to the right and 3 tiles down. If you're on a smaller device and you're not seeing all these tiles, don't be confused. Just pick somebody to wish a Shabbat Shalom to through the participants. You can see who they are. And we'll take a moment now to create connection through the marvels of this technology. As we welcome Shabbat, we do so with the kindling of the Sabbath candles, the Kiddush, the blessing over the Sabbath wine. I invite you, if you have candles that are nearby, to bring them close, and a Kiddush cup as well. Natalie Wayne is going to be called to the Torah tomorrow morning as a bat mitzvah. And so in anticipation of that celebration, we are inviting Natalie and her family to light candles and to lead us in the candle blessing. Natalie, David, Jessica. Go ahead and light the candles.
Mm-hmm. This.
Good. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'ne'er shel Shabbat.
Amen, amen. And now if you lift the Kiddush cup.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hadatim.
Amen, l'chaim, and mazel tov, mazel tov. Thank you so much. We continue now with our adult choir in digital mode, leading us in Lecha Dodi. Page 20 and page 138 is where you can find the words. Take it away, Julian and our adult choir. Danny, we can't hear the sound, so you need to put it through a computer sound. You cannot help but smile at that version of the Lecha Dodi, this beautiful Sabbath hymn. And as we move from Lecha Dodi into Tzadik Katamar, the words you can find on page 22 and page 140. This past week, as we've been counting the Omer, we've been using the midot of Musar, the character traits identified in Musar. And this week, this first week of the counting of the Omer, we've been focusing on tzedek and the midah of chesed, the midah of kindness, of generosity. And we're told in this verse from scripture, Tzadik Katamar Yifrach, that someone who puts forth this midah of chesed, who operates with tzedek, with justice, that they are like a date palm, bearing sweet fruit and with roots that dig deep, that cannot be shaken. We all aspire to be such a human being. The Baruch Hu, our call to worship, is an opportunity for us to do a bit of a check-in as we have begun our service in song and in connection. We now take a moment to make sure that we are indeed awake, that we are indeed prepared together to enter into the first formal part of our worship, the Shema and its blessings. Baruch Hu, beginning on page 28, page 146.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Le'olam va'ed. Le'olam va'ed. Yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadadai,
Evening shadows recline on the earth. How refreshing their coolness feels after the sunlight's brilliant warmth. How good the calm stillness of evening. After the productivity and bustle of the day, how good the peaceful sunset after the day's dazzling shine. The night sky clouds itself with shining stars that appear like God's peace messengers, gazing down on us in silence and tranquility, as if to draw our gaze upward toward the heavens. Earnest solemnity fills our souls. A deep, holy feeling flows through us and lifts our hearts to you, O unseeable, inconceivable one, both in night's deepest darkness and in the sun's glare. Page 373, page 677, the meditation, Open Up Our Eyes.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. Open up our eyes.
We invite Natalie and her family to lead us in V'ahavta, page 36, page 154. Beautiful. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Ella, David, Jessica. We look forward to celebrating with you tomorrow morning as well. The thing is, to love life, to love it, even when you have no stomach for it, and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weighs you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief, you think, how can a body withstand all this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. On page 40, page 158, we continue with the words of Mi Chamocha, words that are included in the special Torah reading for this last day of Passover, the song at the sea that Moses and Miriam and all the children of Israel sang in gratitude and in thanksgiving. So there was a chain in the Brotherhood chat, the Brotherhood group, email group, that began when when Dan Bellows was able to share a copy of a Haggadah that was put together by Rabbi Tarshish, the first senior rabbi of the congregation many, many years ago, and that his family still lovingly takes out and uses as part of their Passover celebration each year. And it led to a conversation back and forth. And Gary Cash made the mistake of saying that he knows a little something about the history of the Maxwell House Haggadah. And I say it was a bit of a mistake because whenever somebody says something like that to me, I immediately think, this would be something good to be shared. And so Gary has graciously agreed to share a bit of the history of the fabled Maxwell House Haggadah, did it again, Maxwell House Haggadah, that many of us grew to know and love in our formative years. Gary, Shabbat Shalom and welcome.
Shabbat Shalom. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't remember agreeing. I think Rabbi said, do it. And I think those of us who know, we just say yes. So maybe there was agreement there. So I'm only looking at me for right now. Let me see if I can adjust this very quickly. I want to see the gallery view. I'm curious, how many of you grew up either using the Maxwell House Haggadah? Just a show of hands. Okay, many of you. And how many of you are still using it? Well, there's a wonderful story about this. So since the 1920s, 100 years now, more than 60 million copies have been distributed, and who knows how often it's been used, because clearly there have been multiple times that family have used the same Haggadah. We've got to go back in time a little bit. In 1981, I worked at General Foods, which some of you may remember that name. It's now known as Kraft. And the Maxwell House brand was the leading brand owned by General Foods. And part of my responsibility working on the Maxwell House brand at the time was to help distribute the Haggadah. And this again was 1981, and the budget for this was $300,000, which, to put it in perspective in today's dollars, there would be $957,575.24. So being responsible for the budget, this will surprise some of you who know me well, I question, why are we doing this? And at the time, Maxwell House was already spending $32 million in advertising because Folgers was competing with them at the time. And that was the equivalent of $108 million today. So why do we need to spend this extra money? Well, the story is one of unbelievable commitment to an ad agency, commitment to the Jewish customers, and great marketing. So I need to back up and give you just a little bit of history. All the way back in 1873, there was a salesman by the name of Joel Creek. And he was a traveling salesman. He was in rural Kentucky, and some small store asked him for the best coffee he sold. And of course, Cheek, being a traveling salesman, he just offered up the single most expensive coffee he could sell. And he did, he sold it to him. And whether it was conscious or curiosity, that night, he started sampling all the options he could have recommended to this poor grocer. And he decided, you know what, the cheaper one was better than the one that was expensive. It delivered richer, better flavor. So the next day he went back to the grocer and said he'd be shipping him the less expensive beans. Well, at that point, Cheek was hooked, and he continued experimenting with different kinds of coffee and truly became the aficionado, literally a precursor to today's Starbucks. In 1984, 11 years later, after that incident, Cheek moved to Nashville, and he was in search of a better coffee. He teamed up with somebody from England by the name of Roger Noley Smith, who was a coffee broker who was also an aficionado at the time. For another 8 years, till 1892, the two experimented roasting and combining and trying different recipes until they developed what they thought was the absolute best coffee. now to sell it. They had resistance. And there was a hotel at that time in Nashville called the Maxwell House Hotel. It was very popular, well-known, and cheeky in its day. And so Cheek, pun intended, gave 20 pounds of his special blend free to the hotel. When the coffee was gone, the purveyor said, thank you very much, and they went back to their old blend. Well, patron after patron started complaining the regular coffee wasn't as good as the Cheeks blend, and so the hotel started selling their coffee exclusively. And legend has it in 1917, some 15 years later, President Teddy Roosevelt visited the Maxwell House, and after finishing a cup of their namesake coffee, declared, it was good to the last drop. At least that's what the Maxwell House Coffee Company advertised in 1920, and there was absolutely zero evidence that he ever uttered those words. But as we know, it is still the line they use today. Well, after that, Maxwell House Coffee became a very well-respected name and had highbrow snob appeal that set it apart from its competition. Well, what's this all have to do with the Haggadah, you might say? Well, the story I was told was that Maxwell House tried to expand beyond its Nashville roots to grocery stores and major population centers on the East Coast, and they failed once, they failed twice. They were going to give up when enter a gentleman by the name of Joseph Jacobs. Now, Joseph Jacobs was an advertising man who had his own agency in New York that worked primarily, if not exclusively, with people who advertised in Jewish media of the time. Think Hadassah newspapers or local Jewish papers, JUF papers. And in the 1920s, Jews avoided coffee for Passover. They avoided rice, corn, seeds, and legumes, and many mistakenly characterized the coffee beans as a legume. So it was treif. Nobody had coffee. And in 1923, Jacobs approached the hotel and said, why don't you advertise your coffee and correct this misperception? And they started running ads in the Jewish newspapers that, quote, it is a mitzvah to tell you that Maxwell House coffee is kosher for Passover. And with that, the brand got almost immediate distribution on the East Coast because of its heavy Jewish population and quickly became the leading coffee brand in America for the next 65 years. The Haggadah was also Joseph Jacobs' idea. Another 10 years passed, they had distribution, and he wanted to cement the relationship between the Jewish population and the brand, almost make an emotional connection for those of you who know me. And he came up with the idea of the Haggadah. They branded it Maxwell House, and if you purchased one can of Maxwell House, you got one Haggadah. Soon, Jewish homes across America, us, began associating Maxwell House and its Haggadah with their Passover. I will tell you more recently, 2011, they updated the text, which we would be proud of. Instead of the 4 sons, they now refer to it as the 4 children. They now refer to unleavened bread as matzah. And as recently as 2019, the Maxwell House brand collaborated with Amazon to create a marvelous Mrs. Maisel theme Haggadah, including a recipe for Midge's brisket. So if you want a brisket recipe, I'm sure you could get it on the Maxwell House website. This is an unbelievably rare story. Oftentimes ad agencies develop a campaign and it runs for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and it's over. And this has been running along with the Haggadah for 90 years. And Maxwell House became the biggest brand owned by General Foods. And out of loyalty to Joseph Jacobs, which is amazing in today's world as well, they chose to support and build a Jewish constituency by supporting Joseph Jacobs. And for those of you who may remember, many brands like Sanka, Brim, Post Cereal, Tang, Bird's Eye, and more, they advertised in Jewish media, and it was because of General Foods' commitment to Joseph Jacobs and the fact that he helped build that organization. So a last story. When President Obama was in the White House, he enjoyed hosting Seders. which was news to me, actually. In one of his last years in office, he was presented with a copy of the New American Haggadah, which is a well-regarded, modernized translation of the traditional text. Reportedly, he flipped through it and said, "Does this mean we can't use the Maxwell House Haggadah anymore?" And now you know the rest of the story. Rabbi?
Beautiful, beautiful. I just I love that story. I love the way you told it, Gary. Thank you so much. It's amazing what we just kind of take for granted and just kind of accept and not really digging very deeply to find out what is the backstory, how did it come to be. It's quite wonderful. So thank you, Gary, for saying yes and for sharing that with us this evening in our last day of Passover. And so we make the pivot now from Haggadah to Tefillah, and to do so with the Avot V'Imahot, the Kivrot, and the Kedusha, beginning on page 46 in our physical prayer books and also in the digital prayer books, also on page 164 in the larger volume.
Adonai, sifatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotinu v'imotinu. Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov. Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imachot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'Ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magin, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magin Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Michaye Hakol Ata Rav Lechoshia, Morid Hatal, Michalkel Chayim Bechesed, Michaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim, Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umkayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Mi chamocha ba'al gevurot, umi domelach, melech memit u'mechaye, u'matzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah l'chachayot hakol, baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
It is impossible to separate the ideas of grief and healing. When we suffer a loss, not only do we mourn that loss, but we seek healing. We seek comfort from our families, from our community, as we move through the stages of our grief, as we slowly move back into life. And as we are about to enter into this time of Yizkor, this time of memory, we do so first by focusing our thoughts, focusing our attention on healing, bringing about healing of spirit, healing of body. We recognize in this moment that there are many who are struggling to gain healing. They've suffered loss. They are overwhelmed by what is happening in our world in this moment, through the pandemic, of course, but through the continued violence, the senseless violence perpetrated by human beings against one another, motivated by hatred, motivated by fear. And so in this moment, as we are moving from the sense of God's holiness, but not really moving from it, experiencing it in the way that we can bring healing to one another, we do so with the words of Misha Berach, asking God, who has been the source of strength for our ancestors, the source of comfort, the source of healing, to bring that healing to us as well. And if there are people that you are especially thinking of in this moment who are in need of such healing, I invite you to share the names in the Zoom chat or on Facebook, however you are participating in worship this evening, and then to take that moment to bring memory in, as perhaps as a way of facilitating that healing that we long for, remembering the people who are able to bring us comfort, who are no longer with us in life, but continue to be with us in spirit. We are going to be sharing images, pictures that have been shared with us of people who have passed on from this earth and who are being remembered by members of our community. We start with Misha Berach, page 253 in our Siddur, in our prayer books.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
In the Talmud, we are taught that the ark held both the shattered fragments of the first set of tablets and the whole unbroken set. While we never lose our brokenness, we can become whole again. We can embrace our shattered hearts. We can become more compassionate, caring, and forgiving, because we feel our brokenness when we feel the pain of others. In our souls, we carry both sets of tablets.
Adonai ro'i lo etsar bino teshayar bitzini. Amen menuchot enachamuni. Nafshi yeshovet yancheini v'maglit Shantam Hashem and Roshi Kosirevaya Achto v'chesed Yirdifuni Koyamei Chayai V'shavti beveit Adonai Le'orech Yamim.
Eternal God, we ask, your help for our need is great. Our days fly past in quick succession, and we cannot look back without regret or ahead without misgiving. We seek to understand the mystery of our own lives, but our effort is in vain. And when suffering and death strike those we love, our faith all but fails us, and we forget that we are your children. God, help us now to feel your presence when our own weaknesses and the storms of life hide you from our sight. Help us to know that you are still with us. Uphold us with the comfort of your love.
Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachover hayam, rishru shel hamayim, barak hashamayim, tmilat hadam, hachover hayam, rishru shel hamayim, barak hashamayim, tfilat hadam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
To everything there is a season, a time for everything under the sun, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to laugh and a time to cry, a time to dance and a time to mourn, a time to seek and a time to lose. This is the time we remember those who gave meaning to our lives. This is the time we remember the bonds that tied us together, the love that we shared, and the memories that remain with us still.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people that we love. The memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are
In this moment of Yizkor, we share together the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim, calling upon God who is filled with mercy, with chesed, that bestow this chesed upon us as we bestow chesed, as we bestow kindness upon one another. El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamramim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazirim, Lanishmat Yakireinu, Shel Halchu Leolamam, Ba'al Harachamim Yastireim, Beseter Knafav Leolamim, Bitzror, Bitzror HaChaim et Nishmatam, Adonai Hu Nachalatam, V'yanuchu V'shalom, Amishkavam, V'nomar, Amen.
We remember now, as a congregational family, those who have passed recently from us, those who died at the season years past, as we recall their yortzites. And again, if there are names that you wish to share with us in the Zoom chat or on Facebook, please continue to do so. We remember the recent passings of Norma Brown, Alan Hirschfield, Marilyn Bunny Kennedy, Ruth Polikoff, Stacy Robinson, Marion Rukin, and Lois Salerno. We call into our hearts the countless civilians killed this week, caught in the crossfire of war, of terror, and of violence. And the following is Yartzeit, the anniversary of whose death occurred at the season years past. Jack Abbott, Mary Becker, Bessie Buckeneck, Mabel Braille, Larry Brodach, Montrose Berg, Jay Byron, John Callahan, Jack Goldman, Robert Goldie, Kent Goodman, Rose Granoff, Iris Greenberg, George Gurian, Ann Hertzman, Ida Immergluck, Eva Kaplan, Leonard Kale, Jordan Lewis, Lorraine Lewis, Larry Litwack, Norman Mallon, Douglas McNaughton, Lane Meltzer, Robert Montgomery, Ernest Newmark, Leo Pam, Stephen Pinsky, Leslie Beth Podal, Bert Pollock, George Rassis, Lena Rawson, Pauline Rosner, Tilly Schneiderman, Joel Schellist, Evelyn Shepard, Adeline Faye Schneider, Arla Snitker, Morton Spiegel, Philip Stutman, Sai Salkin, Rachel Tomback, Ralph Weiner, Jane Weingart, and Jack Wilneff. Zichronam livracha. May the memory of the righteous always be for a blessing. Together as one family, we turn to recite the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, page 294 in your physical prayer books and in your digital prayer books as well. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shem Rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agalau v'zman kari v'imru amin, Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Leolam Omei Omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal Shmei Dekudsha Brichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, Damiran bi'alma v'imru amin, Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amin. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amin.
Oh, say shalom bimrama. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Ve'imru.
May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and bring comfort to all who are bereaved among us. And together let us say, Amen. It is my pleasure in this moment to invite the President of our congregation, Scott Levin, to offer greetings and announcements.
Thank you, Rabbi Cohen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is my pleasure and my privilege to serve as your president at this unbelievable time in our history. I want to thank Rabbi Cohen, Rabbi Heaps, Julian, Danny behind the scenes for a beautiful and meaningful service. Rabbi Heaps, in particular, it's so wonderful to see you displaying your rabbinic presence and depth of spirit, you know, with your voice and participating in the service. And again, thank you to all four of you. The service was interesting at the beginning. There was a little bit of Zoom pressure. First, there was the lighting of the candles with, with the gas lighter. Then there was the sound not working. It's this new phenomenon of getting Zoom right, but it all worked out beautifully. And I want to wish a particular mazel tov to Natalie and the entire Wayne family, to some new Temple Jeremiah grandchildren families, Dan and Sue Weitzman, Ellen and David Goldberg. Gary, your story was phenomenal. Thank you so much for telling it. I also, on behalf of the lay leadership, want to express my condolences and comfort on this Yitzker on behalf of the entire Temple Jeremiah community. In fact, the Temple Jeremiah family. The pictures paint more than 1,000 words. And thank you so much for sharing them with us. If you look in your weekly newsletter, you will see an array of activities: social justice, Musar, Torah study, choir, topics in anti-racism, mental health, music, law, and of course, my favorite, the tour on your tush of Israel. Thank you for being a part of this congregation. Shabbat Shalom, happy Passover. And we usually say next year in Jerusalem, and we also need to say next year not on Zoom.
Amen. Amen. I just, a word about the pictures. What you saw is a collection that began at Yom Kippur, and that was added to at Sukkot, another time when we have a service of Yizkor, and has been added to for Passover when we have Yizkor. There's another opportunity at Shavuot. So if you haven't yet been able to or had the opportunity to share a photo, we invite you to do so. The easiest way to make that happen is to send it to Rabbi Heaps, and it will be included, and we'll continue to build on this photo album of loved ones who have meant so much to us as a community, individually as families, as we move through the year. And just a special note, on Wednesday, we will be commemorating Yom HaShoah, and that will be the music of Theresienstadt and the untold stories of the talented composers behind that music. So that's at 7 o'clock. And again, you can find it, as Scott said, on our website as part of our e-newsletter as well. We are going to bring our worship to a close with a blessing. And I want to encourage you to remain on for an Oneg Zoom breakout, and it's an opportunity to greet old friends and make new friends as well. And feed the hungry on Sunday. Yes, feed the hungry on Sunday as well. So there's, as Scott said, I mean, there's a ton of stuff going on, lots of opportunities to study, to worship, and to make the world a better place. So, Bruchim Hayinu B'Voenu, Bruchim Nehiyeh B'Tzeitenu. Blessed are we as we gather together to welcome Shabbat. Blessed may we be from this time and always. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Pesach Sameach.